If you ask to a retoucher or a professional involved in post-production which Photoshop tool he likes the most for changing the color of an image, I think you will get many different answers. Some people like curves, for example. Other people like levels or color balance, selective color, or even camera raw. But if you ask the same question to a video guy, then you will get a unique answer. Color wheels. Why? Because color wheels are very easy to understand and very easy to use. With their layout based on the circular representation of the hue and saturation, then it's very easy to decide which kind of color range, for example, shadows, midtones, or highlights you want to move, and which kind of direction you want to take towards which color you want to move your image. It's like having a compass that can guide you, can help you to show the right direction you want to take for the colors of your image. Now the great news is that color wheels are available inside Photoshop thanks to Carlo Diamanti and thanks to the color wheels of the Mindthecolor extension. And the good news is that we have many different ways to apply them inside of an image. Let's take a look to color wheels inside the Mindthecolor extension. Color wheels are available when I click on the wheel button, and now on an image like this, if I would like to have a cold color in the shadows, I can move the cursor of the shadow color wheel towards a cold color like the blue or the cyan, for example, in this direction. And once I do that, you can see that a curves layer is created, and if I want to make the cold color stronger, all I have to do is to move the shadow cursor far away from the center, like this, for example. And the more I move the cursor towards the outside, the stronger the color will be. Something like this, for example. Okay. Of course, now, as I'm in the shadow wheel, the color I'm producing is pretty dark, therefore it's not so visible. But if I move this slider to the right, you can see that the color becomes brighter and more evident. Something like this, for example. Okay, I can move this towards the blue. Well, I can be fine with this. Now, once I'm fine with the shadow color, if I would like to have the complementary color in the highlights, that would be easy. In the highlights color wheel, I can move the cursor in the opposite direction, and you can see that a warm color is applied to the highlights. And if this color is too dark, I can change its brightness moving this slider to the right. Or I can move the color wheel cursor to the center, so I can have a less strong highlight color. You can see how easy it is to understand which direction I want to move a certain tonal range of my image. And the same thing applies for the midtones. Let's say I want a kind of green cast in the midtones. All I need to do is to move the cursor in the midtones color wheel towards the color I like, and that's it. Something like this, for example. Maybe just a little bit less. And I'm done. As you can see, all the changes made so far are done through a single curves layer. And that's another easy way of using curves inside Photoshop for creating complex color effects without actually knowing anything about how to use curves inside Photoshop. And then, if this is our idea about the color grading of this image, now the Mindthecolor extension, color wheels, can create the same idea of color grading in many different ways. And of course, you will get very different results. Let's take a look. For example, I'm going to save a snapshot here in a history palette and name this snapshot Curves. Delete the curves layer. And here I can choose another option, like a lock solid, press run and see what happens. Now, the lock solid is made with some color fill layers and these are the colors I want. But anyway, the effect is softer, is more subtle. So if I want to have the same kind of colors, I must increase the colors. So I'm going to move, okay, this is almost at the maximum, but I can move the highlights to make the effect more evident, like this, and also the midtones, like this. Okay, maybe I can increase the brightness of the shadows to make them more visible. Okay, so I like the effect, and you can see how a different option like log solid requires different settings in the color wheels. I'm gonna save another snapshot. Log solid. I'm gonna delete all these layers and choose another option, like maybe the primary solid, and press run again. Now, as you can see, in this case, the grade becomes more aggressive, and again is made with 3 solid color layers with the same kind of color we have chosen. But why is more aggressive? Well, this is because of the changes in the blending options of each color fill layer. Let's take a look. I'm going to save a snapshot here. Primary solid. And I will create a duplicate from the log solid option and take a look. So this is the log solid effect, and this is the primary solid effect. Now let's take a look at the blending options of the shadow layer. You can see the blend if here is limited. And now let's take a look at the blending options of the primary solid shadow layer, and you can see that the blend if range is wider. Let's see the midtones layer in the primary solid. Okay, these are the blending options. And these are the blending options of the midtones log solid layer. Now, the blend if option is more or less the same, but the fill opacity is more or less the half, at 25%. And now let's take a look at the blending options of the log solid highlight layer. Okay, these are the blending options. And these are the options for the highlights primary solid layer. As you can see, the opacity is more or less the same, but the blend if is much wider. In brief, the log solid is more restricted in the tonal ranges, while primary solid is wider and therefore more aggressive. Now, I have all the layers inside the group, so I can reduce the opacity of the whole group, maybe something around 70%, 60%. Okay, this is fine to me. So this effect now is less aggressive and more controlled. Let's save a new snapshot. I will name this like primary solid 70%. And let's take a look at another option. For example, gradient 1. I'm going to delete the layers group and press run. Okay, to me, the gradient 1 option result is more subtle. I do like this. And this is due, I think, to how it's made. Now, let's take a look at the layers group, and we can see inside we have 2 gradient maps. One set in multiply at 25%, and the other one is in lighten mode, blending mode, 25%. But in the 2 gradient maps, you can see that we have the same kind of colors we have decided inside the color wheel. Of course, I can play with every layer and change, for example, the opacity and see how color changes. Let me try this. Okay, this is gonna be too dark. And maybe this one. No, I'm fine with this. I'm gonna save this snapshot. And try another option. Like a gradient color and see what I get. With this option, the result is similar, and it's done with a single gradient map layer this time, and it's set in color blending mode with 25%. Now let me check what happens when I increase the opacity. No, maybe this is too aggressive. I will stay with 25, 26% or whatever. I'm gonna save a new snapshot. And this is a gradient color. And try another option. And this one is named gradient bursa. Let me try this. And this is a very soft effect, very similar. I do like this, very subtle. And again, we have two gradient map layers. One set in screen mode at 10%, and the other one, like the last one, is in color mode at 20%. So I can try, for example, I guess when I increase this, the image will lighten. Yes, of course. But I do like the result anyway. I will save another snapshot. And check the last option available, that is the custom option. Now, when we run the custom option, nothing will happen. Why? Because the custom option has been created to allow the user to customize the way it's done. And you can set up all the options in the panel settings here, in this area, where we can choose the blending mode and the opacity of the two layers that will be created. For example, if I want to set the gradient one in multiply at 50%, I can do that by choosing here, multiplying and 50%, and check the gradient one option. And what if I would like to have gradient 2 in color mode at 30%? Okay, I can do that. And check also this option. Then I click close and rerun the color wheels. And now you can see the effect of the custom color option. Maybe multiply is too much. I can try a different blending mode for the gradient one. Something like maybe soft light at the lower opacity, something like the 35%, for example. Let's try this. Well, maybe this is too much again, but I can reduce the layers group to an opacity like this one. Now I will save the last snapshot and check all the options we have tried so far. So let's take a look. Okay, the first one, curves. Maybe this is a very strong move. I can always reduce the opacity, for example, like this, but I do like the result. Okay. This is lock solid. And remember, we changed the values of the color wheels. So this is a more subtle effect. This is primary solid, too much. Primary solid 70%, much better. Gradient 1, gradient color, gradient bursa, and the custom gradient. Now, which version I like the most is just a matter of taste, of course. In this case, maybe I would like the curves at the lower opacity, like even 30 or 40%. I have so many options I can choose. Or maybe lock solid. I like very much lock solid, for example, or even custom gradient. Okay, so as you have seen, the color wheels are a very powerful tool, and you can easily create a different kind of grade by moving all the color wheels inside your image. And also, what I do really like about this tool is that the same idea of grading can be realized in many different ways with slightly different results. And this is a very good thing. It's flexible, and I do like flexibility when I have to work and I have to set up a workflow. Also, having done a lot of color grading for video, what I can tell you is that the behavior of the color wheels inside this panel is pretty close to a real video software. Okay. Now, what about the same idea of grade applied to a different image? Well, that's very easy to do. I can choose another image, and for example, I can leave the custom option or maybe the log solid option and press run and see how it works. Log solid is not so bad. I can try the custom, maybe too aggressive, or gradient soft, for example. We haven't seen this option in the previous image. So let me check this and see how it works. Well, very subtle effect like we have in this one. And what about gradient color? Maybe this is too much, but I can still reduce the opacity to something like this. Okay, in other cases, color wheels can be very useful to find a certain kind of color or a certain kind of grade when we have images dominated by a single color. And this is a very classic example of what I'm talking about. An image dominated by an overall warm cast, so it's very easy to add a complementary color. The nice question is in which color wheel we should add a complementary color. Now, looking at the histogram, I can see that this image features a good amount of dark colors and highlights at the same time. The contrast is good. Therefore, what I can do maybe is add some coldness to the shadows. So I can click on the reset button, choose an option like curve, and now it's very easy to do that. All I need to do is to move the shadow cursor towards blue and cyan and see what happens. Maybe I can also lighten the shadows, and now I can see the complementary color. Let me check the kind of curves I'm doing. Maybe I can also do the same kind of move in the midtones. Let me try something like this. Okay, this is more aggressive. I can also lighten the midtones. Okay, maybe just a little bit less. And maybe at this point I could also limit the effect to some areas using a luminosity mask. So I'm going to click on the settings, activate the draggable option, and now we can take a decision. If I don't know which kind of mask I need, I can always click on the L mask button. And before doing that, remember to select a bitmap layer. And now let's take a look at all the alpha channels. So let's take a look at the S-Dark1 channel. Good enough. Maybe something more limited like this. Nice. The number 3 maybe is too much. Okay. Now I get the idea and I can take a decision. So I click on the layers mask and choose the apply image command and try to check which one is the best. Now let's try S-Dark1. Before, after. Good enough. Let's try S-Dark2. Nice effect with the skin tones more protected. Maybe I can choose this. I'm gonna click OK. And now there's a great feature I need to show you. Let me throw away this layer. And the feature is that if I already know the kind of mask I need, I can directly click on, say, for example, like we decided, the Dark 2 button to load the mask as a selection and then run the color wheel. And as you can see, the mask is loaded on the layer I'm choosing. And when I change the settings in the color wheels, the mask remains the same and the curves are changed, because the panel is smart enough to remember the kind of selection I made before running the color wheels. And the great thing is that this can be done for all the options in the color wheels except the ones with the solid fill layers. For example, if I'm going to choose the gradient one, I can delete this curve and load again the Dark 2 selection and press Run. And you can see that now the same kind of mask is applied to two layers. This is the gradient map layer number 1 and the gradient map layer number 2. Or, for example, I can reload the same selection, Dark 2, and run, for example, the Custom option. And that's it. And this is the same kind of settings we decided, but with the luminosity mask applied. I can even increase the coldness in the midtones, and the mask is applied to the two layers. And this is a feature I really love. And that's it. As you have seen, color wheels are a very powerful tool and also easy to use. With their circular layout, allow us to play with colors in a very intuitive way. Especially when we have an image dominated by a single color, assigning a complementary grade is just a matter of moving the cursor towards the right direction, towards the right color, and that's it. This is all you need. Also, now that we have color wheels, thanks to the Mindthecolor extension, available with all these options inside Photoshop, I think that every user will use color wheels in his color grading workflow.